It's okay. Hey, Ron.
It's,
I'm good.
I didn't know, I didn't know. I didn't know he was sick.
He's fine. It was a while ago. Yeah, he knows his stuff.
And he wants to keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, how shall I say, you and Barry Pollock working
Yeah.
and me teaching, you feel useful. Well, that's what I figured anyway. I know I feel useful.
You are.
Well, because I've done the math and it's official now.
Yeah.
I started by teaching friends of my wife. They were in my class when I taught at Eastern Campus on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Then I started teaching people who graduated with my children from Brush. And now I'm at a point where I have students who are my oldest grandson's age. I said, okay, I'm now there.
That's what happens if you just wait around.
Well, but you gotta be able to.
Yeah.
The other thing, no, and it's not just waiting around, it's staying in decent health. Your mind being sharp. And the powers that be actually say, do this.
Yeah, well,
We were in Chicago.
There were these moments that I could just see.
I'm good.
We had a good discussion last week.
Oh, yeah? Right. Oh, what were they? Do you
They
remember?
were just these moments. I just,
Well,
so Maya and I
No,
were,
I enjoy your moments. They're much more interesting.
yes, sir, it is.
was it last week we did about
Yeah.
three different takes on
Yes, no, it
That
was
was
the week
two
before. The vote, yes. Universalism versus,
Well said.
no,
I think.
I went to school with Sandy.
Oh, really?
Good morning. Good morning.
And then we moved to Beechwood.
Yeah.
I started out at Shaker.
Okay.
Sandy became a dear friend. Her father, Victor. Oh, I didn't know. Vicky got me involved. He was the one who convinced me to go to law school.
I was gonna say, you guys got out of jail.
Well, he tried that once too, but that was a different story.
Oh, that was my dear uncle.
And then when yeah, it was, if we had an earth full of Victor Cohen's,
Be way better off.
you know, a lot better off than we are now.
He was the youngest. 9 or 11 children.
Morning, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Great. This is. This is.
Butler Rome.
I see that. I never know. I've always thought that. I've made her houses.
Yeah.
There was a lot, he was a lot, but there were a lot.
And it happened on my grandfather's side, so his youngest brother and my mother. were the
Oh, I
same.
just keep rearranging your bag the way.
That happened a lot,
When I was.
especially when you had these huge families.
So Sandy and I are the
Oh,
same.
no, I was kind of.
Really, my mother was tough, but we never looked at it that way.
Yeah, oh.
And I became, I was old, dear friend of Alan's, the babies. I said to Melissa when we walked out, it's Sandy's house, and I was like, I've been there far too many times for shows.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know about this, so. See, Norma and Alan were incredible partners. Hazel and I
Once a large family. two basketballs, one is not enough. At least make it sweet.
Third one is I have two bad news. So apparently, the drought.
And I had, it's funny, this Orthodox last night,
Boys have to be
I know, you have some, no.
He's already complaining that he's not on
I have two girls.
I saw his sitting Where's Spain, he's okay.
Progressively with liberals, so it's not and less kids.
And it is so dry that the colleges. So these
I can't stand it.
and bad very
We
damage. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, like new construction. Which one is the best place? Yes. So I was with my I don't know. Right. So, you know, she didn't have her sidekick. Publish her on your own. Just till it's I'm getting closer.
No, there was one boy that
Getting and I've been divorced for 30 years.
yeah.
But for 3 months, I was getting my sons in the bedroom. I gave them all COVID.
Yeah.
And then I've been with my brother, and I only tried to get this. So she said, well, but I was getting, you know what, maybe it's normal.
Yes.
well, here's the deal. Val and I spoke to
Like motel six.
it's whoever gets out of the Oh, yeah, and,
And they showed kind of analogies of Egyptian and right. No, I mean, in the original temple,
They'll all check it.
And my brother,
The chief rabbi, or whatever you want, he's only on keeping his own. Nobody else could so they didn't go inside. Well, no, because that was a sacred place, nobody could go. So I assume that by analogy, you can say, if you go in, yes, so that's from there, I guess. The separation between holy and
I'm saying, we need change.
yeah, sure. You know,
I'm telling you, we survived a lot.
They sacrificed that.
It was easy to work from the house of Jesus. That very challenging teaching my class from state because Wi-Fi I don't want to forget the expression security.
it'd be good to go. So you live in your fans, that's when I don't have to take one.
It's always painful.
Really? So you lay there, sure, going to front.
I didn't know what I was
Yeah.
a sense of reverence that God is about. I don't remember what it was called, but it was the same story. Historical.
Whatever you want. Take your pick. It's all there. And then this is
And some editions, chapter 3, chapter 1. Yeah, because
I usually
Somebody
But you like them.
You know what I like to be challenged. This is different, this is contemporary, this is a woman,
You just did.
Morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Oh, good. And what a surprise, Apollo's Fires.
Yeah, they'll be here.
Yeah, whoa. Yes, yes, yes. They recruited Mal and me.
Oh, they did.
You step, oh, yes. Well, yes, I'm excited and concerned how fast the gala is coming along, but
Oh, yes, it
I'm
is.
Lord. But anyway, you raise a hand to help, and
I'm sorry?
you're in. You're in. So, okay, well,
Talk to you soon.
I really liked her. I liked her. And then the film was really and that's a good job. So
Good morning, everybody. I always feel a little ambivalent about, should I interfere with the vibrant discussions that are going on around the room, or no? Okay, ambivalence over. No. So it's always good to come in and feel the buzz in the room. So welcome, and welcome to those who are live streaming. We're glad to have you as well. So as some of you may know, we're going to have a second event today after Torah Study. So we're going to stop around 25 to 11, 20 to 11, and welcome Apollo's Fire. A couple of their musicians will be here to preview for us the upcoming concert that they're going to perform here on Thursday, March 9th, Exile and Resilience. The diasporas or the exiles of Jewish communities and African American communities, a program created by Jeanette Sorrell, who has no limit on her creativity. And Apollo's Fire is really one of the jewels of the Cleveland musical and cultural scene. And as you probably know, we have a special relationship with Apollo's Fire. They perform here regularly. I've done pre-concert talks for them. Jeffrey Strauss, who is a frequent participant here in Torah Study, is one of their outstanding musicians. So we will welcome them, and they will preview their show. So what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of a break at 25 to 11 or something like that while they set up, and then we'll regather. Those of you who don't care to stay or have other things you need to do, don't hesitate to go if you need to. You know, this is our general approach at Torah Study. People can come in late and leave early. It's just always wonderful to have you. We're all leading very, very busy lives. Thank you so much for the participants this morning. Sid Kaplan picked up the bagels. Thank you very much. And it turns out that this morning, the bagels and the streaming are sponsored by Armin Pickus. I don't know, Armin Pickus has been an intermittent participant in Torah Study. I don't know that most of you know about Armin Pickus, but Armin always sponsors Torah Study when we get to Parshat Trumah, which is about the creation of the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the wilderness, and its various accoutrements. And over the years, I've been in some conversation with Armin Pickus about differences of interpretation. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the morning, but I just wanted to alert you to that. Okay, our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We praise you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who sanctifies us through God's commandments, enjoining upon us the obligation to immerse ourselves in words of Torah. Amen. Okay, so sometimes I feel as I'm preparing for Torah study the story of the tortoise and the hare. The hare is running ahead, and the tortoise is trying to keep up. Here's the analogy. The Torah portions move ahead. On their own. I'm often confronted by families of upcoming bar bat mitzvah kids who say when we get to Leviticus and they discover to their horror that the Torah portion their son or daughter is dealing with is Leviticus, with all of its interest in bodily functions. And they say to me, can't we do Abraham or Rebecca? And I say to them, I'm sure they don't appreciate this remark, the Torah leads us. We don't lead the Torah. But it is also true, and I say this to them, and I've gotten some of the best kids' speeches from the book of Leviticus. Really, it's if they take up the challenge, and I try to alert them to what's possible in general, they come up with some quite remarkable things. In any event, we're the tortoise here in terms of how we proceed with our parshiot. So today we begin Parshat Terumah, Exodus 25, but I do want to go back. I mean, this is what the tortoise does. To last week's Torah portion and just pick up some highlights of it. It's very dense. And then we keep my eye on my watch because we do want to move to Parshat Terumah today, if only because Armin Pinkus has raised his hand again, figurative hand. Jim?
I just wanted to make mention of something that was in the paper last week. I think it'd be very interesting. Jewish Indian artist Sonia Benjamin is going to be here in town next week.
Yeah.
And she's going to be, there's several places during the week. I could give it to you after class. I was reading her bio. It's pretty interesting.
Good.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for alerting us to that. Excellent. So let's look at Exodus 21, chapter 21, the beginning of last week's Torah portion. So the first word in English obscures a very interesting and I think significant element of what the Torah is trying to get at. These are the rules that you shall set before them. What that obscures is the word "and" that precedes the word "these." The Eila Hamishpatim. And these are the laws. Now, when you have a sentence beginning "and," you can always infer that something preceding it is referred to, if not explicitly. What is it referring to? It's referring back to Exodus chapter 20, which features the Ten Commandments, or the beginning of the revelation on Mount Sinai. So the question might be raised, When does the revelation on Sinai end? If you have what the English suggests, these are the rules, you don't have an emphatic statement that the revelation is continuing. But when you have "and these are the rules," it's suggesting that these rules continue what precedes the "and," the revelation on Mount Sinai. I just want to give a bit of a proof text for this. You don't have to go here with me. But the book of Nehemiah, near the very end of the Tanakh, Ezra, Nehemiah, chapter 9, verse 13. 9:13. Nehemiah, along with Ezra, brought the people back from the Babylonian exile and reestablished the life in the land of Israel. Verse 13. You came down on Mount Sinai, this is a reference to God, and spoke to them from heaven. You gave them right rules and true teachings, good laws and commandments. This suggests a revelation continuity from Exodus 20 to these rules and these laws. Okay? So what we're getting here is a continuation of the revelation on Mount Sinai, which continues all the way until the book of Numbers, chapter 10, fourth book of the Bible, chapter 10, when the Israelites finally do leave Mount Sinai. So they spend a great deal of time there. Okay. By the way, in this regard, I just can't help to have a little digression. Because just this morning, I was thinking about a poem that we have looked at Poetry, and it was alluded to last week, which also has the "and" quality. So when I was thinking about this vav, it reminded me of this poem. And here it is. Some of you know it. It's an astonishing poem, I think, by Robert Hayden, with the title, Those Winter Sundays. Some of you remember it. Let me just read it. And the first two words are, Sundays too, T-O-O. My father got up early. There's the "and" again, isn't it? Because without the "to," we might infer only on Sundays or only now. But when he says "to," this now is part of a pattern that he is describing in this poem. So it has the same function as the vav at the beginning of Exodus 21. Let me just read it. I find this, I don't know about you, an extremely emotional poem. Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labor and the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and so slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house. Speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? Isn't that amazing? That word "offices" suggests continuity, doesn't it? A continuity of love, an austere and lonely love. I just love that poem. Robert Hayden. Okay, an opportunity to read a little poetry at Torah Study. What could be better? Okay, so what I want to do here is first just to note that this set of verses, a set of chapters 21 through 24, is known as the Sefer HaBrit in the Jewish tradition, the Book of the Covenant. Okay? And this is the first law collection in the 5 books of Moses. We have 3 of them. We have this, 21 through 24. We have Leviticus, starting with its law code, and we have Deuteronomy, 12 through 26, okay? And we really shouldn't call them codes because they don't cover all the topics a law code ought to embrace, so we're going to call them a law collection. And here is this first collection. So what I want to do is just notice two different forms of the laws in this chapter. One we could call hypothetical or conditional, and it has the form if-then. So the law is conditioned on the circumstances. And if the circumstances are different, perhaps the law is different. So conditional, hypothetical, if-then. The other is categorical. If the conditional is if-then, categorical is do it, independent of any set of circumstances. It's not conditioned by circumstances, okay? So let's look at Exodus 22, verse 6. And let's just see this kind of law. When a man gives money or goods to another for safekeeping, and they are stolen from the man's house, if the thief is caught, he shall pay double. If the thief is not caught, the owner of the house shall depose before God. Puzzling phrase. It might mean go to the sanctuary. The word for God here is Elohim, which can often be translated judges. So it's ambiguous. It doesn't literally mean before God, and if you do it where, maybe in a certain place. And perhaps it's merely functional in terms of the courts. If the thief is not caught, the owner of the house shall depose before God that he has not laid hands on the other's property. In all charges of misappropriation pertaining to an ox, an ass, a sheep, a garment, or any other loss whereof one party alleges this is it, the case of both parties shall come before God. He whom God declares guilty shall pay double to the other. Okay, so this is a bit puzzling, but if you think of Elohim as judges, then it's clearer. Notice that this is hypothetical. When a certain situation occurs, here's what you should do. And then it generalizes it in verse 8. In all charges of misappropriation pertaining to, and not just one kind of thing, an ox, an axe, a garment, and so on. So this is a good example of this kind of law. Let's go on. When a man, verse 9, gives to another an ass, an ox, a sheep, or any other animal to guard, and it dies, or is injured, or is carried off, and no witness about, an oath before the Lord shall decide between the two of them that the one has not laid hands on the property of the other. I swear I didn't do this. The owner must acquiesce, and restitution shall be made, which already is a significant idea. The power and the force of oaths. There is an assumption here, which I know is a fragile one, that if a person swears before God, makes an oath, then he's telling or she's telling the truth. Because God forbid one should say, I swear, and not mean it. Okay? That's the assumption here. The owner must acquiesce. Verse 11, if the animal was stolen from him, he shall make restitution to its owner. If it was torn by beasts, he shall bring it as evidence. He need not replace what has been torn by beasts. Okay? So a couple of conditional, hypothetical. We could even call them casuistic. Casuistry has kind of a bad name because it seems to be lifting out certain situations and giving them status. Here, casuistic just means hypothetical, conditional. Let's go to verse 21 of this chapter. You shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. So you see, that's categorical. It doesn't depend upon circumstances, if she's destitute, if it happens to be a Sunday. This is a categorical imperative. Don't mistreat any widow or orphan. If you do mistreat them, I will heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me. Notice the echo here from the beginning of the Exodus story, when God hears the outcry of the people and decides to do something about it. The first appearance or reappearance of God since before the Joseph story. That is, as an actor and not just one referred to, okay? So what's interesting about this, aside from the idea itself, take care of those who are vulnerable in society, this is seen as something in the same category of God's great act of liberation. It's not just that God took the people out of Egypt when they were vulnerable and mistreated. It's that that very act has ripples that continue down through the narrative and the laws in the Torah. This has application to other forms of mistreatment, and not just by your enemies, by you. Okay? So that one could draw the following inference, that if God sprang into action in order to save the people from persecution, from mistreatment, then the Exodus act is not over once we create our own society. We can ourselves become subject to or actors in mistreating others. In other words, the Exodus experience is not about others, and it's not time-bound. It's also about us. We can bring a kind of servitude into our own societies. And if we mistreat others, we act like Pharaoh. You think that's too strong? Because here God is, my anger, verse 20, if you do mistreat them, 22, I will heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me. My anger shall blaze forth, and I will put you to the sword, and your own wives shall become widows, and your children orphans. If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, do not act toward them as a creditor. Exact no interest from them. If you take your neighbor's garment in pledge, you must return it to him before the sun sets. It is his only clothing, the sole covering for his skin. In what else shall he sleep? Therefore, if he cries out to me, I will pay heed, for I am compassionate. I love this little law for the following reason. Not only does it express compassion for the vulnerable, it moves from law to sermon. There's a sermon here, isn't there? If you, verse 25, take your neighbor's garment in pledge, you must return it to him before the sun sets. End of the law. It is his only clothing. In other words, it's not enough just to obey the law. You've got to recognize the pathos of the situation with which that individual is afflicted. There's something very emotional about this, isn't there? It is his only covering. Oh, I get it. It's his only covering. Okay. No. The sole covering for his skin. In other words, the emotional point is made, and then it's made again more intensely. It is his only clothing. It's the sole covering for his skin. In what else shall he sleep? Now, that's a rhetorical question, isn't it? What is a rhetorical question? What's the function of a rhetorical question? To involve the listeners in what the person, the the speech maker, the sermonizer is making. I'm asking you, in what else can he sleep? I'm moving on in my sermon, but I'm calling upon you to say to yourself, wow, what? And if the sermon that can get the audience involved, then that sermon is to that degree more successful. In what else shall he sleep? Therefore, if he cries out to me, I will pay heed, for I am compassionate. Let's continue a little bit more. You shall not revile God, nor put a curse upon a chieftain among your people. Another categorical imperative. Let's look at chapter 23. You must not carry false rumors. You shall not join hands with the guilty to act as a malicious witness. You shall neither side with the mighty to do wrong. You shall not give perverse testimony in a dispute so as to pervert it in favor of the mighty. Nor shall you show deference to a poor man in his dispute. Another categorical imperative. This is how you must act in all situations. Don't you love, though, that the author is midway in the thought process, turning from what we might infer as an attempt to rebalance things in favor of the poor person. That this is a bit of social policy, right? We always have hierarchy in societies, but a just society tries to balance them to the degree that it can. And then at the end, the author switches gears on us. Don't show deference to a poor man in his dispute. So it moves from an apparent favoring of one social class to a concern for something that transcends particularity, justice. And that's what we want, because if we favor the poor for good reasons, we might subvert justice, okay? So the author moves from one very powerful concern to another one. When you encounter your enemy's ox or ass wandering, you must take it back to him. So, a couple of weeks ago, I think, I gave a Devar Torah Friday night sermon on this kind of passage, where I wanted to suggest that the Torah here is both very realistic about human nature, but also making an attempt to get us to transcend the lower aspects of our human nature. When you encounter your enemy's ox or ass, what is our natural reaction to what people we don't like or who don't like us? Let's just call them enemies. That may be a little strong. Well, we're disinclined to help them. We may even harbor a little bit of glee that person is, him or herself, suffering a bit. So I think what the Torah is suggesting here is human nature can express itself in this kind of way. Realism. We don't love everybody. Not everybody is lovable to us. Transcend it. When you encounter your enemy's ox or ass wandering, you must take it back to him. And that's expressed in Hebrew in an intensive way. Hashev teshivenu, the same root used both as an infinitive and as a conjugated verb. Not just take it back. You must take it back, or I really mean take it back. Why that intensification? Because it's resisted by human nature. You really want me to make an effort to bring my enemy's ox or ass back? Are you kidding me? Yes, I want you to do it. How badly? I really want you to do it. And the intensification here is, it seems to me, a recognition of our disinclination to do just that. When you see, verse 5, the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, we know who you are. You're going to refrain from raising it. You must nevertheless raise it with him. Okay? So, once again, it strikes me that these very succinct little categorical imperatives are getting at two things at once. Who we are, we're not angels, but that we can try to overcome our limitations by doing the right thing. You shall not subvert the rights of the needy in their disputes. Keep far from a false charge. Do not bring death on those who are innocent and in the right, for I will not acquit the wrongdoer. Do not take bribes, for bribes blind the clear-sighted and upset the pleas of those who are in the right. Once again, I mean, the proclivity maybe, or tendency, or temptation to take favors. Not just a judge in a law court, but maybe all of us who favor those who we think can give something back to us. Don't take bribes, for bribes blind the clear-sighted and upset the pleas of those who are in the right. You shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay? So this is also, I'm not sure you're agreeing with me on this. I feel the tension in these laws that we want you to go above and beyond your impulses. Do not oppress a stranger. We're all afraid, to one degree or another, of aliens, of those who are unlike us. We don't know whether they're a threat, and so on. No, we must transcend that impulse and don't oppress a stranger. And I know it's difficult for you, so I'm referring now to your own experience in Egypt. You were a stranger, and you were freed from that. And therefore, the Exodus experience ought to continue to resonate in your own communal life. 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield, but in the 7th you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Are you kidding me? I'm working hard every year, planting and cultivating and weeding and whatever one does. And I deserve to reap the benefit of my hard labor. You really want me to let it all go for a year? I don't want to do that. Don't you think that's human nature? But in the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave let the wild beasts eat. Okay? All right. From Monday to Thursday of next week, anybody can come and eat off the land. But when Thursday's over, it's mine again. No, it's not yours again. Once the needy have eaten from it, you have to continue to leave it alone because the beasts of the field have a right to it as well. In other words, you worked hard on it. Our labor creates possessions. I work for something, it becomes mine through my labor. But there is a point, and it comes regularly, when your labor does not produce possessions of yours, it in some important way is owned by everybody. Ownership is tentative, and it's not absolute. Get over it. There's a stunning social policy here, isn't there? That, yes, I mean, hard work creates possessions. Possessions create wealth. Wealth is unevenly distributed within a community. There are inevitable inequities. Don't you think everybody has a right to a dignified life? The author seems to be asking. And therefore, once every 7 years, at least, you've got to acknowledge the tentative quality of ownership and that something transcends the results of your labor. And that is human dignity, over which you have no control. This is given by God. And this is an attempt to move in that direction. You might say it's not enough, but it's certainly an impulse to try to rebalance a society which has become unequal, hierarchical. Maya?
Doesn't it echo the seventh year, the Shabbat?
Yes. Yeah, the sabbatical year. And we get that every 7 years, and then every 50 years, the Jubilee, we get that in the book of Leviticus. And it's an interesting point, because we have the exploration of 7 days rest, 7 years rest, 7 times 7 years rest, so that cycles of 7 are an attempt to build on something natural, I might say. I mean, God rested on the 7th day of creation, and therefore the 7th day, the seventh day, year, and so on, is not the function of the product of a social convention. It's a product of what is natural, in the sense that God made it. And therefore, we don't have a choice about observing it, because it is a way of not acknowledging a depth quality to our reality. That rest, stepping back, is a right for everybody, and we have to implant it in our social mores. Jim?
Well, isn't the implication even stronger here that I think what's being said is, you think you own the land, you think you own the animals. No, they're mine. I'm leasing it to you for a while, but it's really mine, and you've got your limits, including your longevity.
Right.
And it's all mine. It's all God's.
That's right. I'm looking, here in Leviticus 25. But the land must not be sold beyond reclaim, for the land is mine. You are but strangers resident with me. So the point Jim is making, what you're drawing from this, another implication, is then stated later in the laws of Leviticus. Yeah, I often think about, let's put it this way. There are at least 2 kinds of questions about God. One is, let's call it ontological. Ontology is about what exists. Okay? Another way is functional. What is the function of a belief in God? Okay? So, you can't fully skirt the issue of ontology, but you can ask yourself, let me put it from the point of view of skepticism. If you have trouble believing in the existence of God, let alone the God of the Bible, a personal God who enters into the human situation from time to time and has an impact, a causal impact. If you're having trouble with this, why not think about the function of a belief in God? We might put it, there's a famous book by a neo-Kantian late in the 19th century, Hans Weininger. And the name of his book is The Philosophy of As If, als ob. And Weiner's point here is, and it's a sort of a Kantian point about what Kant calls the postulates of practical reason. What sorts of assumptions do we need to make in order to live productive, rich, satisfying lives? Euclid's geometry has an axiom which can't be proven. So-called parallel postulate, that parallel lines intersect only on infinity. You can't show that that's true, but it depends upon a certain notion of space. Think of circular space, think of a globe. Straight lines intersect twice on globes. So what Euclid was hypothesizing was this parallel postulate, which, though it can't be proven, is central to the success of Euclidean geometry. So that, let's just use the language I've tried. The ontology of the parallel postulate is up for grabs, but its function is certain. And it strikes me right here that this the idea of the function of a belief in God, because all the land is mine, and if one accepts that functionally, it results in a very powerful set of social policies. And if you want to get those policies, this is one way of doing it. I'll just say one more thing about it. Because function does follow existence. I can't believe in the function of something that doesn't exist. So the next move that could be made, if you don't believe in a personal God, is what kind of God could you believe in who satisfies certain criteria? I'll give you Mordecai Kaplan's definition of God. The power in nature and in us that makes for human flourishing. Not a personal God. It's in a way Spinoza's idea of God equals nature, that nature does provide us the wherewithal of living satisfying lives. And I don't have to believe in a personal God to believe in something that exists prior to me, that sets the stage for my life, and which carries within it potential. So if you're looking for ways of having social norms, personal norms, given power, one of the ways of doing it is to bring God into the picture. And then the question is, well, what description or definition of God can you tolerate? This strikes me as a very powerful mode of thinking, actually. Now, maybe these things can be accomplished in other ways. Kathy?
So we've talked about a functional God. We've talked about a compassionate God.
Yeah.
We've talked about a wise God
Right.
who gives rules in order, being smarter to help us learn to be better. But going back to verse 17, which you skipped right over, it says,
Deliberately.
you shall not tolerate a sorceress.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we're a lot wiser in the modern times to understand schizophrenia and problems and people led astray. That doesn't seem very wise, doesn't seem very functional, and it's interesting that it sort of comes full circle in the New Testament when Jesus is confronted by such like a sorceress and becomes very kind and very compassionate and either drives out the demon that causes this behavior or says, let's be more understanding of what's happening here.
Yeah.
So, or why is not the God of the rules a bit more consistent philosophically?
So it's a big topic. Let me say a couple of things about it. I believe I'm right to say that in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus is quoted as saying, think not that I come to bring peace, but I come to bring the sword, to set mother against father and parents against children. So violence also, I mean, this is quite obvious, has a very large role in the New Testament. Think about John chapter 8, Gospel of John. You Jews are children of the devil. How much mischief has that one line caused throughout history? So here's what I want to say about that in terms of an attempt to be neutral to some degree. One of the things that makes scriptures last, durable, is they tell the truth about life. And life is filled with deficiencies. We could romanticize nature and say it's in nature that we find peace and calmness. Well, read Annie Dillard's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, and she shows you the violence in nature everywhere. I mean, reality, human reality, nature, natural reality, we could say God, is filled with ambiguity, some good and some not good. So it's quite true that the God of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, is given to violence from time to time. And we can try to skirt around it and make excuses for it, but there it is. And I think we're going to expect that kind of thing from Scripture, because Scripture is not an attempt to give a pretty face to a reality that is often not pretty. Here's the next thing I want to say. Judaism, I think, and I think this is true about all Scripture-based religions, they have to engage in commentary. You have to ask yourself, what is the meaning of this passage for me? And it can be, your criteria can be either, how does it personally affect me? Or how can I interpret this passage in order, to use an ancient expression, save the appearances? You've got to try to save the Bible from too much radical criticism, because the Bible also gives us, Scriptures give us powerful stories, powerful ways to live. Science engages in saving the appearances too. You know, the ancient notion that the heavenly bodies move in perfect circles. And that's based upon a doctrine, a dogma, that circles are a perfect form, and therefore the heavens are going to reflect perfection. And lo and behold, when astronomers began to investigate the heavens, they found out that that was not true. And so you have a circle for in the orbit of a certain thing, then you've got to put a circle on the circle, and a circle on the circle on the circle, in order to save the appearances. Circle on a circle on a circle saves the idea that heavenly bodies move in circular motion. But look at the pyrotechnics that have to go into that until Copernicus comes along and reorganizes the universe, so to speak. So, you know, Heschel says about the Bible, this is a radical statement of, I think, of reality, that the Bible itself is a midrash. The Bible itself is an interpretation of what? Of a set of experiences. The experiences are primal. And then geniuses come along to try to give language, and therefore to preserve the power of the experience. Not only the experience that somebody else had, but that I could continue to have. So Heschel is making the radical point that the right way of seeing this is not the Torah as revelation, God's word, and then we take our hand at it and interpret it, that it needs to be moved back one step. The Bible is already the beginning of the history of interpretation. And since interpretation is given by human beings, it's likely to be flawed. So, but nobody, look, the point here, look, what's to be said about this? The awful things in the Bible, two things. One, they're there. And they can't be, you can't take an eraser to the Bible and take out the stuff you don't like. So it's like a powder keg. It's ready to be set aflame at any moment by a malevolent interpreter. And that's true, that can't be denied. The Bible is a dangerous book. That's why the rabbis, by the way, don't want the education of children to start with the Bible. You start with the interpretation, and then you get back to the Bible. So I think you're making a very good point, that those things are there. The question is there so much of those bad things as to undermine the sanctity of the Bible for those for whom it is? Or is it an expression of human nature because the Torah wants to tell us the truth? But the other thing to say is that from the very beginning, interpreters have wanted to save the Bible from excessive criticism by interpreting it. So the law of the rebellious son who curses his parents, and they take him down to the central gate, and he's examined by the judges, and if they find it to be true, he's murdered. The rabbis say about this was never enacted. It was only a theoretical attempt to talk about the sanctity of honoring your parents. I remember an interpretation by Rabbi Lilieveld who said, it says parents take him down to be, and Rabbi Lilieveld's comment was, what are the chances that both parents are going to agree to this? So the Torah is in a way undermining itself by making the standard for persecuting that child too high. That's an ingenious interpretation. We might think of it as a very arbitrary one, but it reflects an impulse to try to neutralize some of the ugly things so that we do this with our friends, don't we? We do it with our parents, our loved ones. We try to give them a break because the friendship is so valuable that we don't want the real problems in the friendship or of the person to undermine what the benefit of the friendship is. Lynn? Yeah.
I had a very clear picture of what you were saying after the question was asked about Leviticus by Jim. And Jim was saying that God owns the land, so this is why you have to share it. But then in this Exodus, it was saying that this is the right thing to do. How you treat other people, how you treat those who are in more need than you, but just also believe in justice for all, those who are in need and those who are prospering. And my question is, as you actually framed it, it helps us in how we want to believe in who God is for ourselves, who God is in our life.
Right.
And what the Bible is offering is two different approaches to looking at it. One is, you can believe in your own personal power to be good to people because this is what, the Bible says, that God would like you to do. But if you can't do it on your own, because this is what your religion is teaching you, then you can look to the more specific order. This is my land, and that's why I do it.
Yeah.
So this is telling us whether we can be the power of ourselves, which you said, because I was writing it here. And, what kind of God can we believe in? And if we can't, and if we have to be told what to do, then we can go with Leviticus. And the last thing I want to say is, why do we have to compare all parts of the Bible to another part? Why can't one part be in itself making a proclamation like we were saying, and then Leviticus making another proclamation? Why can't it be in unity? Why do we always have to figure out how to say this here and that there?
Yeah.
It confuses me.
Okay, well, you've raised 2 points. One is, what's the source of our empowerment? Is it ourselves or is it some external force? And that's a question we're all asking ourselves. I mean, we certainly have role models in our life. I think about my parents all the time, especially in moments of dilemma. And I think of, their goodness and how it has impacted me. So we do, from time to time, some of us, all of us, refer to, let's call it the authority or the example of others. And there's a continuum. Am I relying on myself? or am I relying on others? And that's a question we all have to answer. Second question is, does one have to compare different parts of the Bible? Does that bring in and this raises the interesting idea of what I like to call the Torah within the Torah. I've taught courses on the 6 most important chapters of the Bible to me. That's my Torah, broadly understood now as teaching, within the Torah. And I think there's no harm in that at all. What is it that, it's like books that we've read and cherished. I don't cherish every book I've ever read, but there is a subset of the books that I've read which are my sources of wisdom or insight or comfort or whatever it is. So I think it's a good idea. The problem with doing that with the Bible, small problem, is that, at some point some editor put it together. We think that maybe it was Ezra. So there is a unifying impulse in the Bible. There used to be the discussion about biblical theology. What is the main concepts in the Bible? What's the essence of biblical religion? And that was an attempt at discovering unity, in which case, if they can prove that, then all passages in the Bible have to in some way harmonize with one another. I think scholars have basically given up on that quest for the unity of the Bible. There's a famous example, what's the guy's name? Walter Eichhorn, I think, who said the essence is covenant. That's a powerful idea. Covenant weaves itself all the way through the Bible, but not everywhere. So, right. I think we can, just as we do with literature, favorite poems. This guy's poem is in my canon. It may not be in yours. And that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so here's what I want to do now. Let's move to 24. Chapter 24 finishes last week's Torah portion with a very climactic event. Let's look at it. Then he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord with Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders, and bow low from afar. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but the others shall not come near, nor shall the people come up with them." Okay, so different gradations of ascent. They're all coming up, but Moses is going up higher, and Moses alone. And this is another of the very frequent attempts to show the singularity of Moses. Not only because he was a great guy, but because he was the one who got the Torah from God. And therefore, if Moses is singular, so is the Torah. That's that logic, I think. Maimonides says that Moses was not only the great legislator, but the greatest philosopher who ever lived. Moses knew more than... So this connection with God for Moses, for Maimonides, is that Moses got insight into the nature of things to the depth that nobody else ever did. This is a philosopher's way of talking about the singularity of Moses. Moses, verse 3, went and repeated to the people all the commands of the Lord, all the rules, and all of the people answered with one voice, saying, "All the things that the Lord has commanded we will do." They said it before in chapter 19. They say it again. Moses then wrote down all the commands of the Lord. One of the beginning moments of the creation of the written canon of the Bible, right? From time to time, the Bible alludes to writing. This is not just oral. This is going to be written down. Early in the morning, he set up an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He designated some young men among the Israelites, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as offerings of well-being to the Lord. Moses took one part of the blood and put it in the basins, and the other part of the blood he dashed against the altar. So far, so good. We get it. Basins, altar. Then he took the record of the covenant and read it aloud to the people. And they said, "Oh, the Lord has spoken, we will faithfully do." Na'aseh v'nishma. Literally, we will do and we will understand. Moses took the blood and dashed it on the people. I'm not looking at Kathy. So this is a tough moment. I mean, it's not the toughest of moments. He threw the blood on the people and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord now makes with you concerning all these commands." Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 elders ascended. They saw the God of Israel. I thought no person can see God and live. So obviously this is the sensibility of a different kind of author, don't you think? Under his feet, under God's feet, there was the likeness of a pavement of sapphire, like the very sky for purity. Yet he did not raise his hand against the leaders of the Israelites. They beheld God and they ate and drank. One commentator, I think it was Harold Bloom, calls this a picnic with God. A picnic with God. But they're very close now, right? They see God, they bring out their blanket, put the food on it. God said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the teachings and the commandments which I have inscribed to instruct them." So Moses and his attendant Joshua rose. Here comes Joshua, second in command. We've seen him before, but the ascent of Joshua is going to continue too until he becomes the successor of Moses. But here's the beginning, or one of the beginnings of that. To the elders he had said, "Wait here for us until we return to you. You have Aaron and Hur with you. Let anyone who has a legal matter approach them." When Moses ascended the mountain, the cloud covered the mountain. The presence of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai. Boy, the author is having no problem here with anthropomorphisms, seeing God in human terms. The presence of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai, and the cloud hid it for 6 days. On the seventh day he called Moses from the midst of the cloud. Now the presence of the Lord appeared in the sight of the Israelites as a consuming fire at the top of the mountain. Now, here the author backs away from anthropomorphism, right? Puts a mediating image between them, some sort of a fire, which is an apt replacement for God, right? It's a substance, but if you touch it, if you dare to touch it, it seems insubstantial and so on. It's got power, destructive power as well as constructive power. Moses went inside the cloud and ascended the mountain, and Moses remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So that's the end of a great section of the Bible, the Sinai revelation, which is consummated here. And as I said, the revelation continues. But this is a climactic moment, isn't it? When Moses ascends the mountain, receives this, and has some sort of intimacy with God. I do want to move a bit to our Torah portion for today. Okay, the tortoise is catching up. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves him." It's voluntary. You got to mean it. Or if you do mean it, do it. "And these are the gifts you shall accept from them: gold, silver, copper, blue, purple, and so on and so on. Tanned ram skins, dolphin skin, acacia wood, oil, spices, lapis lazuli, and all the stones for the setting, for the ephod, the breastpiece of the priest, for the breastpiece." And here's the purpose of it. "And let them make me a sanctuary." You see, sanctuary is a thing in a place. And we have, in the first verses, what we just read of this chapter, it itemizes all the elements that go into the making and the beautifying of the thing. So at this point, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and by extension, the synagogue, Torah doesn't say that, but that's what There's the Torah. There's Mount Sinai right there. And at this point, a interesting move is made. And let them make me a sanctuary that I might dwell among them. So it looks like, as important as the place, the thing is, the function of the thing is to gather the people to have some sort of interaction with God, that I might dwell among them. V'asuli mikdash, v'shachanti, that I, as above again, which can be interpreted, read in a number of ways, v'shachanti b'tocham, that I might dwell among them. So that the center of gravity is shifted from thing to people. Exactly as I show you the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, so shall you make it. In other words, a blueprint precedes and directs the building of the building, which points to a distinction. Proper building and improper building. Proper building is you take your cues from God's plan, or if we broaden it, from others. Here, of course, it's God's plan. Improper building is doing it on your own, perhaps for purposes unintended by God's plan. That's the golden calf. So if you think of the metaphor of a picture, the picture and the negative, the picture is the Mishkan, the negative is the golden calf, the underside of the golden calf. Okay? Then verse 10, they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold. Overlay it inside and out. Make it upon it a gold molding round about. It starts with the most important element, and that is the ark itself. Right at the center of 1/2 of the tabernacle. We'll get into that at some point. Cast forth. Notice the most precious metal is used for the most precious item. So we have a kind of hierarchy of important places and important things in those places, and a hierarchy of the metals that are used for them. The most precious metal, the next precious, the next precious. Cast gold rings for it to be attached to its 4 feet, 2 rings on one side of its side walls, and 2 on the other. We can picture this. So the ark is portable. It's got rings at its 4 bottom corners. Make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Then insert the poles into the rings on the side walls of the ark for carrying the ark. Okay? The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed. And deposit in the ark the tablets of the pact which I will give you. Here I want to reintroduce Armin Pickus. This is why he sponsors bagels every time we come to this portion. Because there was a point many years ago when I argued that these poles are functional only. They're symbols of the sanctity of the ark, that in some sense one cannot approach it casually, but the poles themselves merely serve a function of allowing the people not to touch the ark as it moves through the wilderness. So now I would like to read to you what Armin Pinkus sent to me. I should say that Armin Pinkus, is it Pinkus? Pinkus is a fictional character who has fictionally corresponded with a longtime member of Torah Study, who brings this message, though fictional, powerful, to us. So I'm going to read it to you right now. He addresses the person to whom he has sent this. My name is Armin Pinkus. 128th generation owner of S. Pincus and Sons, purveyors of fine acacia wood poles. 128th generation. We are the pole subcontractor to Bezalel ben Uri, the builder of the Mishkan, the Ark of the Pact, also known as Ark of the Covenant and related items. Our company has not been actively engaged in manufacturing for many years, but continues and has continued to maintain an office in order to answer questions about our products and correct misinformation concerning them. While we do not have Rabbi Klein's email address, we felt that contacting him through you might lessen the chance of a peremptory delete. If I got this message, I'd scratch it out. That was his worry. As you can imagine, over the course of our company's 3,200-year history, there have been some difficult communications, from which experiences we have refined our contact techniques. Family history relates that Yussel Pincus never fully recovered from his conversation in 1178 with Dr. Maimonides of blessed memory. It has come to our attention that there is a notion abroad that once the Ark of the Pact was parked in the temple, its poles served no further purpose, could have been removed or not, and became mere symbols, perhaps pointing to the Ark's journey from Sinai through the wilderness to its final resting place in Jerusalem. And here he writes in bold capital letters, can you see it? 2 words with 4 exclamation points. Symbol, schmimble. Please remind Rabbi Klein that the prime architect's specs for the ark provided, and now he quotes our chapter, make poles of acacia wood, overlay them with gold, then insert the poles into the rings on the side walls of the ark for carrying the ark. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark, they shall not be removed from it. More to the point, Pincus goes on, the poles are an actual bounded area of physical space in the real tangible world of history, where mankind can safely encounter the divine presence in close proximity. The parkers of the ark were careful to maintain that space and to memorialize that they had done so when the ark assumed a position where it was not visible and available as it had been, quoting 1 Kings chapter 6 now. The priests brought the Ark of the Lord's Covenant to its place underneath the wings of the cheruvim, those are little angel guys, in the shrine of the house in the Holy of Holies. For the cheruvim had their wings spread out over the place of the ark, right, the ark there, so that the cheruvim shielded the ark and its poles from above. The poles projected so that the ends of the poles were visible in the sanctuary in front of the shrine, but they could not be seen outside, and there they remain to this day. Back to Pincus. We are proud of the fact that at no time since the poles were installed has a pole bearer been injured while carrying the ark. As the court said in dismissing the wrongful death case, executor of the estate of Uzzah versus the heirs of Bezalel ben Uri, also there were affixed to each side of the ark warning labels. Because remember the story of Uzzah. Uzzah and Achio are carrying the ark when David has conquered Jerusalem in chapter 5 of 2 Samuel. Now in chapter 6, they're going to bring the ark into Jerusalem. And they're guarding it as the wagon is carrying the ark forward. And the wagon begins to tip. And the ark is about to fall. And Uzzah grabs it so it doesn't fall. And immediately he is zapped to death by God. Talk about power. Also, they were affixed in the lawsuit where Batzalel was being sued. No, we put labels on, we put warning signs. They were affixed to each side of the ark warning labels stating that contact with this ark other than by poles provided can result in severe injury or death. See, this is something that is not in the Torah, but has to be inferred, doesn't it, by commentators. Children under 8, this goes on, should not congregate around the ark unless supervised by a parent or guardian. And then Pincus raises a question. Remove the poles and the safe space is gone. Why would you do that? Please convey these thoughts to Rabbi Klein so that the record may be corrected. I would also like to make a request of Rabbi Klein. If he accepts, he may contact me by email at the above address. I have not been contacted about this request, but I'm still ready to do so. So Pincus says, our youngest son Joel, who is a sophomore at Yale, has fallen hopelessly in love with a Hittite girl. Mrs. Pincus and I were wondering whether Rabbi Klein would be willing to talk to him. And I've conveyed to the mediator here, yes, I would be. I'd be very glad to. This is a later communication. This is the third year, dear Rabbi Klein, this is the third year our family has the honor of providing the bagels for Torah study. This was several years ago. This must be the 8th or 9th year. On the Sabbath, that coincides with the Parsha Truma, in which God instructs Moses on the construction of the Mishkan and the Ark. It might be well in the midst of the Joseph story, where God's presence was a benevolent whisper, slightly tweaking the action now and then, to reflect for a moment on the time of Parshat Teruma, where holiness was palpable in the midst of the community. Clouds, smoke, fire, thunder, lightning, wonder, awe, and danger. We are reminded that there is inherent danger in the mystery. This, I think, is Pincus's point. Symbol schmimble. There's danger here. God would not and could not suspend the danger, but did ameliorate its fatal consequences by providing for the acacia wood poles, which you may recall were provided by our company, S. Pincus and Sons, with which the ark could safely be carried as it accompanied the Israelites on their journey. As a firstborn son, this is a little aside, but still, I can't help but notice the sorry state of first sondom in Genesis. In our family, stewardship of S. Pincus and Sons falls upon the firstborn, a tradition spanning 129 generations. While my sister and brother were free to pursue their interests in whatever directions they took, I, by accident of birth, was set on a prescribed path. As the destruction of the temple and the loss of the ark recede further into history, my steadfastness of purpose is often the subject of derisive comments in and out of the family. Why are you continuing to do this? And yet I gladly stand at the ready for when the ark is found. Repair or replacement of the poles will be our responsibility, thus enabling the holiness to again reside among us. So that's a tour de force, isn't it? And look, I mean, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. But also a very serious question has been raised, that it's easy for us to take a situation fraught with danger, fraught with mystery, with peril, which may be a feature of holiness. Dangerous holiness. Take off your shoes. You're standing on holy ground, right? When Zipporah goes to circumcise either Moses or the son, this danger enters when Achio and Uzzah try to carry the ark. So when we moved to what I think Armin Pincus would say, I can't speak for him, would say that this is an attempt to rationalize an idea that is very hard for us to put our arms around, and that is dangerous holiness. Holiness is not dangerous, we want to say. It's only benevolent, beneficent, but it's also got this portent about it. We carry the Torah around. I remember, by the way, dropping a Torah scroll on the bima on Yom Kippur, very early in my career. And as soon as I got home, I began to get catalogs for law schools. But I was appalled, as people forgave me for it. But we carry the Torah around. We have it closed. We try not to read it with our fingers, but with a yad, with a pointer. Nobody thinks that they're going to get zapped like Uzzah did, but still we treat it as something special and that needs to be dealt with in a special way. So I think that this whole, the Pincus thing, which I really love, the first letter that I just read was from 2009. I don't know. I haven't heard from Pincus in a while. Maybe he recognizes that we take more seriously now what we seem to be very casual about. I don't know. What do you think about that question? Which one? Can we accept the notion of dangerous holiness? Stuart?
You referred to this as a tour de force.
Yes.
I think it's a tour de farce.
Very good. Why not both?
Okay.
That's good. That's good. Sure. It's making lovely fun at the enterprise, isn't it? Yeah. Joan?
I have a question. We have a God that had to furnish the Jews.
We have what? Say that
A
again?
God who had to furnish the Jews with manna during their journey to Israel. Where did they get gold and sapphires and all the things that God is requesting of them for this?
Where do they get all of these materials with which to build the Mishkan? And there are two answers at least to this. One is, let's bring the author in. We got you. Because how could they get all that stuff? Just having left Egypt. So it introduces a skepticism, an unrealism about it. And, you know, one could either say in this regard that the author exaggerates beyond credibility, or in a way, part of the meaning of this story is its mythic quality. This is an enchanted movement through the wilderness toward a promised land, with all of its perils and delays. So it becomes a kind of paradigm of the difficulties, the prospects and difficulties of liberation. So one could take an improbable assertion and use it, whether the author meant it or not, as a way of shifting genres. This is not so much an historical reminiscence, but a way of saying something. The other thing to say, which is much clearer, is that I think in chapter 11, the Israelites borrowed things from their neighbors. So could they have supplied them with everything? That's still improbable, but it does make a little bit of a move toward realism there. Malcolm?
I enjoy what you've read to us in the seriousness that it focuses us in these supports or guides. And I wonder if I could conjure the Kohanim or our rabbis or our teachers as the poles that bring this scripture to us and try to protect us from not, as Kathy I think was alluding to, not abusing what could otherwise be a dangerous book.
I'm not following you. Do we protect the people? Is that what you're asking?
I'm saying that you serve a role as poles
As poles.
to to guide us, to carry us, or to carry this book to us and safely.
Okay, yeah. So I have to think about that. Yeah, I like it though, because the ark is, one of the things about the Mishkan, and we'll get into this at some point, is that it's structured in a three-part structure, which mirrors Mount Sinai and how the people go up. So that at this point, they leave Sinai, but they carry Sinai with them in the ark. This is Sinai, that is portable. And you're saying, in one sense, the portability allows us, clergy, to help carry the people through our lives. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. By the way, I wonder if I have the wrong week for Apollo's Fire. Are they out there? Oh,
They're here.
go have them come in. Doggone it. Yes.
Two remarks. First of all, it's almost like two authors wrote these chapters, because the God that gives the rules is a different God than you have to worship with gold and silver and everything. And it's almost like Pharaoh, God like Pharaoh, give me the best. The other thing is about the Mishkan, and the funny thing about it is, what does it mean? Can I continue?
Yes, sure. Welcome. We'll talk in a minute. What?
So the other thing is the fact that you had to carry this Mishkan. Does that mean that God doesn't want to dwell in an established place?
Portable.
So do you want to have the Mishkan or the first temple as a stationary thing versus God will be there wherever you are? So in exile or diaspora or wherever.
That's an awfully important point. The difference between temple and synagogue. Because the temple, in a certain way, fixes, it absolutizes space. There are spaces that are richer, have more fertility than other spaces, whereas the synagogue represents the isomorphic quality of space. All spaces are equal. So you put your finger on something very important. I'm sorry we didn't have the doors open so that I would see that you were coming. Oh my gosh. So let's pause for a minute while our Apollo's Fire people set up, and then I'll say something by way of introduction, and we'll do it. Shabbat Shalom. Please stay. Robert Hayden, Hayden, those winter Sundays. It's an astonishing.
Because my father was always so busy with the Jewish community that the only day he was home was Sunday.
No,
We went out and bought bagels and cream cheese and lox and rolls, and we never said thank you. We just took it as, and it's just sitting, yeah. Hi. Nice to see
I would like to refer to today, words I just heard. There's an argument.
What an opera should be.
Oh, good. Thank you. I don't know this.
This plays.
Hi, Jeanette.
Hi, Roger.
Hi. What could we do here? sorry, Steve.
No problem.
The people are scattered around, so this is probably. Okay, I'll take a look. I'll ask Jen for a stand-up. Are you all right?
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to want you to say a word about the introduction.
This plays on my computer. It did not play in my DVD player. I don't know. I have another copy of that, so.
Oh, great. I don't know the opera, so that's great. Is it? So much out there.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, good. I should get this out of the way too.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Roger. Renee?
That part's fine, it's when we come back to the conference. Isn't there a little bit of a lift?
In front of the Torah? Where am I?
In our usual setup, so.
Yes. I know, it's so nice, I just wait.
That looks like a stand-up light, doesn't it?
Oh!
Well, wait a minute. Where's the mic? It's, oh, there.
Oh, okay.
I
can just do him. I can just do it.
Okay.
I think that's the easiest.
Okay, good. So you see how it turns on?
Okay, sure. Yeah, thank you, Roger.
How are you?
We are so glad to see you.
I think we need like one more minute maybe. Yeah.
One more minute, we'll be good.
Okay.
Just gotta get some. I have it, it's just gonna take another collection.
Well, everybody else, everything has been.
So yesterday we went to the Rainey Institute. Do you know the Rainey Institute on sort of the 55th Street? It was extraordinary. The kids are brilliant. The teachers are brilliant. Cellists, violinists, flute player. It was unbelievable. We're going to do more of it. I just never had seen such a beautiful facility for after school. I wanted to go myself. They have a beautiful little theater, backstage, music rooms, brilliant teachers. We didn't have a chance to talk to them much, so I don't really know who they are. But the kids, I have photos, we're going to post them, I'm sure, of kids playing the cello beautifully. And then Renee sat down, and I think my time is up because Roger, I was just filling time and saying hello to my friends.
You're good at that.
Oh, ouch. Oh, man. It's nice to see you too.
We may need a little.
A little more, well, I'm going to leave that to you.
Okay, well, welcome again. Jeffrey and I, as you can see, collaborate from time to time, and we manage to together fill up the space and the time. So we're just so delighted to have musicians from Apollo's Fire here to preview and introduce us to the program that they're going to perform here on March 9th. As I said earlier this morning, we have a lovely ongoing relationship between Apollo's Fire and the Temple, which has performed here many, many times, and many of you and our congregants know these musicians and love them and always revel in the creativity and the excellence of their musicianship. The name of the program on March 9th, which they're also performing in Bath and Rocky River and the Museum of Art. The title of their program is Exile and Resistance, Music of the Jewish and African Diasporas. It says here, a new program conceived and directed by Jeanette Sorrell. Let me just mention the names of those who are here this morning. First of all, Jeffrey Strauss, whom we all know very well and love, and Emmy Tanabe.
Yes, perfect.
I asked just Jeanette to phonetically describe it for me. And Tina Bergman, and Renee Schiffer, and of course Jeanette. So let's welcome Apollo's Fire.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Roger, for inviting us and always welcoming us here at the Temple. We love being here, and this Temple has really sort of been a place where we could incubate our Jewish music programs, actually. The first Jewish program we ever did was Sephardic Journey in 2014, and we premiered it here. There've been others since then. This is essentially the third major one that we're working on, and it's very fresh. So we're just learning this music, and we are just a small contingent of the ensemble that will be performing in your sanctuary on Thursday, March 9th. But can you all hear me comfortably, or should I use this? This is not on anyway. You're fine, right? Okay. So just a word about sort of the theme of the program and what inspired it. I've long been fascinated by the effects of exile on the human soul. And of course, if you think about it, both Jews and Africans have, in history, been ripped from their homeland, sent in chains across the sea, and forced into a new life on a new continent. And yet both of these groups have developed incredible resilience. The power to find joy in tiny neighborhood rituals, and of course, much of the joy comes from the music.
They both have actually the most beautiful music that I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, that's what this concert is about. And many of the people in the ensemble have roots in both of these cultures. We will have with us two soloists who we're bringing in from the UK, actually, who are specialists in Yiddish and Ashkenazi music. And they're quite renowned in the Ashkenazi scene. We've worked very hard on their immigration visas. And one of them is somehow in limbo right now, which is very scary. If anybody knows people at the London Embassy, just speak to me afterwards, please. So we also will have Daphne Moore, who some of you may remember from our past concerts, lovely Israeli recorder and ney player. The ney is a Middle Eastern flute. We have two lovely African-American artist fellows who are part of our company. Obviously, I think many of you know that Jeff was trained in the cantorial tradition. So it's a wonderful collection of diverse artists we're all going to be mutually inspiring each other. I forgot to say that Renee also has deep Jewish, Eastern European musical roots, which is a big resource for us. So we're going to start off here with a Sephardic piece that we have played before. This one we know. And this is called Fando El Rey Nimrod. Legend has it that this was the song that the Sephardic Jews sang as they marched out of Spain. It may not be historically accurate, but that's the inspiration of the song. I hope you enjoy it.
Padre
was an exile, but his story was veiled in mystery. You could never figure out why he was so distrustful of strangers, and really distrustful of everyone except our little family, my mom and my sister and me. Why was he afraid to be arriving home after dark? And since he told us that he was Swiss, why did his passport say place of birth, Romania? And then there was also, why did he seem so unfamiliar with the Bible stories that I learned at church every Sunday? So for Papa, the experience of exile, I think it became a kind of prison for the soul. And the only people who were allowed into this prison were my father, or my mom, who he called his spiritual savior, and my sister and myself. So we'll continue with that little story in a moment, but here's a little interlude. We're going to play our first ever klezmer tunes. We've never played klezmer tunes before, but we hope you like them. 2 tunes. had all these mysteries about my dad, and then one day, Jeff entered the scene. As you may know, Jeff's grandparents were also Jewish exiles in America, having come during the time of the pogroms. So Jeff was the first person who noticed that my dad's accent was not Swiss, it's not French or German.
I'm really ashamed that I didn't notice that earlier.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Yeah. I never questioned it, I never doubted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, the truth that we eventually figured out is that my dad and Renee's dad both walked out of Hungary in 1956 at basically the same time. Yeah. We'll get back to that. So, anyway, Jeff was the first person who noticed the accent and that my dad's name surely was not Sorrel originally. So after a DNA test and day spent in the archives of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, my world was sort of turned upside down, and the walls of my dad's prison were shattered, which has turned out to be a beautiful thing. So as a result, in the last 3 years, my dad sings all the time. He especially loves to sing with Jeff. They're kind of soulmates. And his resilience is really an inspiration to all of us. So now Jeff is going to sing Tzur Mishalot.
This is a song. It's Zmilah that we sing on Shabbat afternoon. It has 5 or 6 or 7 verses. We'll only do 2. The first thanks God for the meal we've just had. And the other verse we're doing talks about the rebuilding of Jerusalem, which seemed particularly appropriate for a program about exile and resilience. It's a very beautiful tune, I think.
So today, as we know, more people are displaced on the planet Earth than ever before. That's what the UN tells us. With refugees and migrants really crying for justice and mercy on the doorstep of Europe and the US. So we hope that these concerts that we'll be doing will help us all reconnect with our shared roots as fragile human beings on a fragile planet. So, hoping to see all of you on March 9th here at the Temple. And then if you would care to tell your friends and family, we will be on tour, taking this program to Chicago, San Francisco, Palo Alto, Stanford, New York City at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and then in April to London. We'll be in residence at St. Martin in the Fields for 3 concerts, the Exile program and Vivaldi's Four Seasons Rediscovered, and a late night program called Blues Cafe 1610. So if you have friends in London, or if you care to come with us, which some people are, so far 15 patrons are coming with us on tour. Yes, don't miss out. You can come. Seriously, if anyone is interested, you can just contact the Paulus Fire at our box office and they'll put you in touch with the right people. And then we go also to the Heidelberg International Spring Festival, Heidelberg Frühling, and that'll be our debut in Germany. So we're going to get to know the program very well by the end. But looking forward to working with our guest artists from the UK as well, and the whole amazing collection of musicians. There are 24 musicians in this program. Well, any questions before we play our last tune? We have one more tune. Or Jeff, were you going to make any other comments?
I guess I'll make a comment. How can I resist? About Jeanette's father, who I adore. When we first learned his history, I very much wanted to talk to him about his youth in Romania. And that was just not going to happen, and there was no good reason to force the issue. In fact, there's every good reason not to. And it occurred to me one day that, this is hard to say, but there was a sense in which a Jew was killed in the war even though he survived. And Greg, his name is Greg, has said to his wife and to Jeanette, well, that part of my life ended on the platform at Auschwitz. But, I should say, and, with the flowering of these 3 programs through his daughter, and you know we're a couple, so I can say this freely, the experience, in a sense, has given life to a whole new cultural appreciation for me. We hope for our audience. It's a beautiful thing to see such horror transformed into joy, deep spirituality, and love. So we very much hope you'll come. We're also at the museum in March. Check the website.
April 4th.
Which is a nice place to come if you care to. And yeah, come on tour. It's going to be a blast. Thank you for staying today. Yeah.
Question.
Actually, 2 questions, unrelated. Thank you for sharing. The first piece that you did, the Spanish
Ladino,
Exodus,
yeah.
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Was it Ladino?
Absolutely Ladino. Yeah. The second in Hebrew, yeah.
Secondly, what is the magnificent instrument being played magnificently behind you?
Let me turn it around and I'll give you the...
While she's turning, I'm going to brag on Tina. Pete Seeger said she is the best hammer dulcimer player he ever heard.
Thank you. So
this instrument has a really remarkable past. Many people know this instrument as an Appalachian instrument and think it is an American instrument, but it could not be farther from the truth. It actually originated several thousand years ago in the Persian Empire, and it spread throughout the Middle East. It's played today in so many cultures, and it was played historically in many cultures. In China, it's played in the folk and classical music, and it's called a yangqin. In Hungary, it's called a cimbalom or cimbalom. There's a lot of different ways people are pronouncing that. It's called a cimbali.
But cymbal, like in the klezmer world, we say cymbal, but yeah.
There's a lot of different. Every time I go someplace, somebody pronounces it differently, which is beautiful because it comes from so many different cultures. This particular one was made by a luthier in the U.S. He's actually from West Virginia, but he has instruments all over the world. And the hammered dulcimer, when it first came into existence, was of course much simpler. It was a simple braced sounding box with strings strung across it, perhaps not even really any bridges. And of course, as time went on, it became more sophisticated. And in different cultures, it's tuned differently. So for example, on the cimbalom, they have a chromatic lower part, so they can do these incredible fiery runs by just doing that. And for me to do the same thing, it looks like I'm like one of those crazy blow-up dolls outside the car. Hands are flying. Actually, this next tune that we're going to see, you'll see hands are flying in all directions, which is joyful and a lovely challenge. I just love it. There is an instrument called a mountain dulcimer, which is completely unrelated. They like the name, which means sweet sound. This is set up in keys, so if you are familiar with music, it's circle of fifths. So C, 0 sharps, 1 sharp, 2 sharp, 3 sharps, and then my 1 flat key. So a lot of this music is in flat keys, and this is not a flat key instrument. So I'm like, this is a growth opportunity. It's fabulous, which it is. It's wonderful.
Or you can retune it.
Well, not really.
To a flat key.
You could, but then muscle memory kicks in, and then you're, all things go sideways. But this pedal, some of you may have noticed me playing this pedal, and it's a mute pedal, so it draws down on these 2 bars. So here it is without, and it's always awkward, but here it is with. So it takes the shimmer and the ring out of it, and you get a drier sound. Yes. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
And then my cello is, it's just a cello, but I didn't have the money for the end pin. So.
Your birthday's coming up, right?
Just one other comment about the upcoming program, which relates to your story, Jeanette, and Jeff's visit to Rainey. We're taking the risk of bringing both our children and our grandchildren to the program, and I think in terms of exile and resilience, the notion of exposing our next generation and our next generation to the experience of the music is something we look forward to.
That's absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being with us. We're going to take you out on a fun Turkish, slightly Sephardic, Middle Eastern tune called Longa Nagawan.
So I hope you brought your dancing scarves, your silk scarves. Lots of floor room here.
looking forward to a wonderful concert. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, this was the bridge, so these are the two main bridges, and then I have this third one that's very small towards the hair, and the opposite, so my lowest ones are on over here to the right.
I mean, basically, the people who are coming, everybody just gets their own tickets, and then we would arrange to get the concert tickets for the concerts so that everybody has a concert together.
Exactly, because there was this, and then the
And then there are some dinners and
I forgot in Germany and Switzerland, it's called a Hammerrecht, which is Chaco,
museum or something or whatever, but those things are all optional.
So do they fly with you?
Everybody books their own flight. I mean, we may or may not all be on the same flight. People can come. Some people like to come for little tours and some for short, right?
Yeah, right.
So, but then within London, usually London's the 4 days. For example, on the Sunday, we're playing a concert that's 2 hours outside of the city in the countryside. It's out. Yeah. So the patrons and I are all going to ride together on a coach bus. Yeah, and we'll ride out to Oldborough. Yeah. So yes, on hollisfire.org, our website.
Okay, good.
Okay. So if you go to the touring page, under our website, you'll see it there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in mid-April. Yeah.
After Passover.
Remind me to stop.
I think it starts the 6th of April.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, good.
But these actually aren't sympathetic strings, what happens if these are real because the bridges are next to each other, they have to block that. Each other, they actually are coming up each other. Yes, exactly. So these strings are over these bridges and go under this bridge just to get up. Okay. These are here and they go under that bridge.
Yeah.
But they vibrating. Yes, because I play with the style I have wide dynamic range. And some people play some people use very stiff, very light hammers, and they're literally giving the string this very different sound. And what they like is very different. But I prefer I really love water sound.
Was that perhaps in
Yeah, so if you think about what I was doing to introduce the sound, there's a mountain dog. That's the one that you play it on your lap, and 3 to 5 seconds, it's threaded and strung or finger pick. So your guitar is not anything like your right out. You maybe we are. I love I am. Well, I've been teaching since I was 12, so I probably Well, I was telling ladies earlier that my mother had a catastrophic health event when she was in her early 30s, and she was not old at all. But when she was recovering from that, one of the things we did, we went as a family to Hartzmark Village, the Living History Museum, and they have a big music festival every year. She's on the last and she actually brought the other one. And so she brought that home. But it was on the back of the couch, and she was upstairs, she was taking a bath, and lived on the back of the couch. And I thought, like, you can take it to the floor and sit on the floor, so you can't hurt it. So she was in the bath and doing the funeral, everything, and she came to the top of the stairs, and she said, what are we practicing for? We came down, and it was me playing the Mountain Dolls wearing, so she got me one of those. And then she bought my dad a small hammer delivered because my brother was on playing harmonica.
Great talking with you. Always.
Okay, so I actually, I have a seven. Right. So, okay, so oh, I think I just got a picture of the, and I wonder if I know, did you? This one.
You see the camera? I think they sold it to George.
Even not alcohol, you're from the so caffeinated. Yeah, well, like maybe you come to the parking lot.
Well, they sold it maybe 15, 20 years ago to Colgate. And a beer guy. And I mean, part of the family, right? I guess.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Funny, I mean, it's just so typifies, at least in terms of our sex of it, small town community.
Right, yeah, you know, when you were mentioning the part this morning about throwing the blood on people, you know, there's a wonderful gospel tune called Power in the Blood. I think it means the blood. I mean, the idea of blood is not simply Old Testament. You know, the blood of Jesus gives.
Yeah, the blood, the bridegroom of blood there, and so on. Yeah, well, you know, I did bring. Moses of the blood, and really, your reality. Pillars, right? So it's perfect because these guys are waiting.
They're great.
son to stay here afterwards. That's the day we're handing out the Purim bags, 3 to 6. I wonder what time the concert is.
7:30.
Poetry? Wow.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. Well, of course, so we're kind of scavenger poetry that day. Oh, well, but you can always come in.
I can't be.
I'll write you a note.
I hope you carry your books.
I'm fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then we'll talk.
That she's might be.
You bet. Everything's better.
The actual,
But the other side is like, I'm on another. I said, you know,
I mean, what
nobody wants to do it. That's the other problem. Like, there's some people on the, I was on this one. Yes, what I said was, just some boyfriends.
No,
Where are you closer to something?
Yeah, there was a, sometimes that's the loudest people.
yeah. Just decide what you want to do.
Maybe Maren.
Well, she's 5'7".
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Listen, I gotta know most people are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
That's why I would do it if we.
You're very down to earth. What's going on? What's going on? You know,
I know myself.
yes.
Because there's no point.
And I realized what was, that,
I'm still
I realized that there was trouble in River City when all those people got fired. When
Well, that was it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's always necessary.
Oh, it's a
email.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
And
But they got
in
fired for it.
Irene.
so. I'm very sorry I've been absent so much from school. I have a note from my,
I thought it was.
They said it was the pandemic.
let's discuss later.
And then they also said that,
We took off this issue, yes. My beloved. It's close. Doesn't have to know the taste. Yeah. Partner. Partner is a
I mean, I
So, you're supposed to go to club.
She quit today.
Yeah. I see you on, yeah, sure. You been okay?
Yes, Christie.
Yes. Yes. I get both, yes. You, busy as well. Very busy. But, in the service of an institution I love, so.
And so.
But that's what's happening.
I know, but then.
Oh, I will.
And he left.
I don't know if I'm gonna make it to the-
My brother, sorry, I thought we were talking about, yeah, so, it's going to be and, but I think they.
I was live streaming from Chicago, Michigan.
And.
So, I mean, the great question.
There's an article in the Times, and I never heard of it. So I'm meditating. I can't. I'd like to be able to know what she saw.
We were looking for on the whole, you know, the Google Maps pictures where it was being.
And also,
But I don't know whether it was
he was in a group of.
He can't die. He's scheduled.
No, he's scheduled.
There were those sophomores.
It's like King David, right? As long as he kept studying.
Oh,
Not disturbed.
And then, you know, the next day, they didn't know what to do.
Well, I don't know.
Some of them had already been
Yeah, who's there? Yeah, I'm going.
You can escort me.
I just gotta get my coat.
they were killed, the refugees.
Oh, my God, it is done.
If I first of all, that's also the same as one soldier, that's all, there's no the others.
Yeah.
Total commander,
Yeah.
no others.
Oh.
But it's also the kind of,
You love it all?
a kind of, rumor that gets, like, people get
Well,
affected.
to the end of 6, there's,
Oh.
the end of 6. Did you read it?
I gave a talk on the triumphant ending and the nihilistic ending.
But it is 200,000.
Yes, yeah.
The last of a
Very
cacophony
old.
ending.
But it's still
But it is
cool.
possible.
It's still cool.
Yes, and 9, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not a particular fan.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay.
The means of
Yeah,
It's a little
it came out more
much
recently because my
specific,
daughter
of course,
finally
you know.
told me.
But the
Yeah.
songs
He finally admitted
The
that he
songs are
was in the neighborhood for a couple years.
amazing. Kinder totally.
Oh, but I did a Kinder totally.
My
Did
my
you really?
dad told me once that he saw
The
his
eyes,
famous cellist
the eyes like
in Budapest
Oh,
for
yeah.
and where the cellist lived. He was
You, I didn't talk, the talking mother was
you know, Liszt Academy.
not, it was
His name was
not
Adolf
music, but
He was the most famous
teacher
teacher
of how the music illustrates or
And,
each part of his life.
his famous thesis too was
Substantially,
Love for Alma.
So starting
the Alma thing
was
was fifth.
And my dad
Yeah.
it wasn't my dad's teacher or my dad's teacher's teacher,
Yeah.
but he saw him.
Yes.
The screen.
Yes, yes.
He never thought of them might be related because that was a Jew also. And
Pretty good stuff.
was completely wrong about him.
I did, okay, if you have a chance, it's Bernstein.
Anyway,
in Europe.
maybe my dad's one of them.
Right.
You know, is that,
I think it's the first
was he still
the resurrection,
wearing the
where, you know, the first movement.
I don't know why.
The funeral of the hero of
I
number
don't
one.
think he really ever did. because
That's what he said, it was like a Titan.
Oh,
And Bernstein is
because the impression from you was that.
See, well,
You know.
Yeah, yes, I do, sure.
And he goes like this.
there's a video interview with him
Yes.
saying, maybe I should let you
Yeah.
know. And he says in the interview that it was
That's
a
the very there. Take a look.
I will.
And there's-
You did a lot with Vienna on YouTube.
This is, I think, in.
Oh, really?
Somewhere.
I'll find it.
Yeah,
Like my
oh,
dad.
first movement.
Okay.
Well, my dad went to synagogue, so sang in the choir.
Okay,
With
But-
no.
but family was 9 years old, and so, you know, by the time.
I don't know how I thought of all that.
Oh, my God, yes.
Yeah.
Especially with all the service he had.
Yes, that much. My dad says that they did.
Opera and so on.
Opera, I didn't think that he was in New York conducting the Philharmonic, so it was part of the family.
That's
Yeah,
true.
my grandmother told me that
The
it
three
was not
loves,
very.
the lows and the
But
six.
in the 40s.
And Alma said they would.
Yeah, my dad was born in 1930,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's
All right.
only
All right,
to the
great to
war.
see you.
my
Great
family
to
was
see
very
you.
poor. And after the war, most of my.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
And Renee, thanks to you too.
I told him a beautiful story from my family that he
Oh.
might actually, it's so beautiful that
Oh, I didn't use
he
it.
might actually use it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that story once.
Yeah, I would love to hear it.
I'll see you in an hour. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe we cut you off.
But my grandmother told me that after the war, it was very hard to still be Jewish, to be a practicing Jew.
Yeah.
And with the communists. And also, what's the point after the Holocaust? What's the point of still being Jewish?
Right.
And, you know, there were two reactions to that.
Right.
The other one was, of course, we shall.
Yeah. Right.
But our family was like, what's the point? And so they
Yeah.
secularized.
Right. It seems like my dad and his brother are the examples of those two different reactions, because apparently my uncle became more religious. And my dad was completely absolutely not.
Okay, see you there.
Yeah.
You there?
Sweetie, I'm gonna see if I can find Roger before he gets in his car. I have to ask him one thing.
Say again?
I'm gonna see if I can find Roger. I have to ask him one thing.
Well, you know where the rabbinical suite is?
Do I?
It's right from the entrance to the right.
Okay.
These little, that thing is going in there too? In the Hartzmark. Where they go? Where at the lever? Huh? Where's your shoe?
Taking no break, mother? I work more than 6 hours, they don't take it out anyway, I'm taking it.
No, you gonna sit down in a minute.
What? She.
What?
She.
What? You don't even know.
I can't even think of that word today. Woo, boy, we almost knocked me off my knees yesterday. He came, he was charging at me from behind. I had to lock my knees real quick. He came. I don't even tell him, just say what is it? Girl, he came. I was standing in his doorway, but he came from across the room, an empty room. So he was running full of speed. Let's start there. Or whatever. He like kicked in and he ran to the back of me. I said, oh shit, I had jerked him. Lock my leg real quick. Like, God, damn it. I'm thinking about being like, if he knocked me down. Oh my God. And then here,
Augie out there, here, Augie now. What happened? And then he came back.
son tried to kill me yesterday, man.
You know, she did tell me, so you know your son grabbed that lady, and then she fell.
Oh, you was told me?
He grabbed that lady, and she just fell. He was like, come here, what's her name? Kiki.
These kids heavy.
I like that damn dog, scary dog.
Very heavy. That's one night where I stayed on that side of the table, and that dog would tackle me back and forth. He came anywhere near my legs, out of it, like to be on the floor.
Sure.
Eating the devil. What part? Yeah. So it was like flip, that was a bunch of flip-flops.
Man.
Somebody hit me.
Y'all ain't got that many bagels to be.
Somebody took flip-flops. They needed them in the house.
And then you talk about when I refill
Oh,
tomorrow.
oh, for those ones?
No.
Oh, for what? Oh, okay.
I just want to grab them behind the sitting and ready to be filled up.
Okay.
That's the type of shit I want to do because you don't know what to expect. I'm trying to be like, muscle sauce.
It's in one spot. I was about to say, please do what I do. I do not take water back to the kitchen. I'll open the door, I'll throw it outside.
You take my water, bro.
Huh?
You take your hot water.
So I believe your water in there, right? The hot water. So wait, he's still coming to build it for me? Where about? I was like, you know, it's time to become really good at Batman.
Yeah, he be, yeah, that's how I do it. That's how I do it. You don't come in right until this shit starts. Yeah, right off of the.
One day,
Anyway, noticing that he sometimes take his class until right after school, school,
so everybody know. That one day, I don't know who he needed to talk to up that admin hallway. He was in her, I mean, looking up and then. He had a briefcase, he was looking up all the time. And the crazy part about it is I didn't even see him leave. And then and we were all crying. That's the fuck out of me, you know, what's the thing? She very, very fixed that door open now. Yeah. camera now. So what?
You tell me. No, I tell me. When we bring them down. I'm listening.
I ain't been here a couple Saturdays.
I'm listening.
I wanna say school.
So Rabbi Klein doing a Torah study today. Or do they got a guest speaker question?
Wait, I thought Torah study already happened.
I mean, Shabbaton. What do we got in here, Keisha? Explain.
School coming around Sunday, don't it?
Shabbaton, what's happening today? What you about to set up for today?
In here? Yeah. I have no idea. I don't know. Go ahead. So did you put in the square up?
No.
You know?
No.
Well, how did you put? Damn, I ain't been here in a couple Saturdays. I ain't been here.
Go get the shop, go look at the board, tell me what you see on there that's happening next. Get the setup. Setup, all the needs is on the board.
I was supposed to leave you at 12 o'clock.
What time is it? Oh, you sure ain't left. With your funky ass.
I'm gonna leave it one. Yeah, Jen for sure. Wait, because we supposed to work how many hours a week? I mean, how many hours here in 2 weeks? 50? 25 per week? Yeah, if I leave it at 1, I'm gonna get like 53 or 54. She gave us on the quick.
That's what you think.
Huh?
So that's what you think.
You don't think he gonna say nothing?
He always gonna say something, but what can he do? We'll pay it off. And Twine only making like 9 hours a week.
Oh, he probably won't say nothing then.
Yeah. It's probably why she doing what she doing. And she using him, and he gonna be the reason why. So then Lou gonna be eventually say, no, he gotta go. Watch. He cut his hours, we gotta cover them shifts.
He seems so nice. He don't even seem like he be in there cussing people out.
Who? Piss him off. Perhaps he ain't choose your ass.
About what?
Oh, see, it wasn't your fault.
I'm about to say, that wasn't my fault. You better have to come you that shit, that wasn't my fault.
Because it was his highs and the Florida. Hope fucked up. She gave Selena too many days.
Did she?
So Selena ain't got no more days either. He hot. He probably about to take hope off that. Ain't nobody fuck. I said, I said, all I can say is I told Keisha before she put that shit in that she was over her limit and she kept saying
But
hope.
no, I told him, I kept emailing.
But I was about to say, you said hope. And then kind of find out again, once again, hope fucked up again.
Yeah, I kept.
So this where it came out that it was hope doing the dumb shit.
I kept emailing her.
And I kept saying, I said, Jen, I normally keep up with them. Every time they put days in, I write. I used to have a file on my computer where I keep up with when they request days off. And then at the end, when I call.
That's why there's certain stuff that you should keep up with.
Who?
You.
A supervisor?
Yeah, like they need to give you your.
Yeah, she got to keep up with that shit. So that's the problem. She ain't been keeping up with hoping they been keeping up with the shit. Ain't got nothing to do with it. That's what I told her. I said, I used to keep up with that shit, but I don't work. I used to keep a file on everybody. But why the man up on the supervisor? I'm people, remember? So, I'm done that shit.
What you doing with these brownies?
With who?
That box on the table.
That box is Granny Gills. Remember she said take all unused shit back in here. Because they use it as a snack.
So do she get mad?
Who?
Oh.
No. She get mad at her.
I gotta say that's probably.
Only when she get cussed out, but Lou probably ain't cussed her out shit.
Like you ever
And
seen
he
her?
ain't gonna cuss her out because technically he's supposed to be doing it.
You ever seen her out her?
But he put it off on her.
You
But
ever
he
seen,
is her boss. Shit.
you ever seen her out her hookup?
Who?
Oh.
She'll cry. sensitive. Oh, shit. I don't know about it, so that's why you can't really say much.
What has to do with she be mad?
Cry.
Damn.
Oh, when she mad, she a bitch. But as soon as you say something to her, check her about it, she cry. But that's kind of all over for her.
Cause I don't see Butch about me like that.
Who?
Kathy.
She cry.
Seriously? What the fuck?
That's sensitive, man. You don't cry. But be mad as hell, but then cry to her or something. You gonna go that way?
Anybody around and stuff?
Who?
Anybody.
Me.
I'm talking about people outside of your.
My old boss used to be mean. Bob get mad.
Oh yeah, somebody was talking about him yesterday. They said he was a motherfucker.
Bob get mad. Yeah, it's a lot of shit, motherfuckers. That's what we need around here, because that's why shit going the way it's going, because motherfuckers ain't scared. And because ain't no consequences and ain't shit happening for her, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Kim was showing her little authority at one point, but you weren't showing your authority at the right times. You was being mean and ruthless for no fucking apparent reason. So, your shit went out the window.
Oh, okay. So wait, I just figured out what it does. You get the circle, right?
What?
And it's wrong. That look like, it's like, I don't know. They look the same from over here.
What?
The ends.
One bigger, one smaller. Man, that's what I'm trying to help you get the setup done. And then open up them 3 classrooms that need to be open. And then we just need to empty people in 11.
You ever had a yeast infection?
Huh?
You ever had a yeast infection? You said yeah?
I just had one because I was on a fucking antibiotics.
Yeah, I think, because they gave me, I had to take 4 pills after that abortion.
Yeah, antibiotics.
And then I want to say his fingers were dirty the other day, it was nasty. Yeah.
Shut the, you let her put some dirty fingers on me?
He had to, I'll get the call, you can say about this. So, we in the fucking room. We doing it, bitch. So, I like, we doing it from like, like, dog, stop it, I can't girl. This little old coochie man still got the power to it. I figured it out. Now snatch the whole time off. But why the motherfucker get stuck in it?
Oh, Lord.
And he had to get it out. So it took me a minute to get it out. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, crap. Because I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, if you gonna get it out, I'm like, this gonna be an embarrassing ass hospital trip.
That ain't embarrassing, bitch, motherfucker, all that shit all the time.
You said what?
Motherfucker, motherfucker, that shit all the time.
That isn't big.
I didn't know that was normal.
What?
That kind of shit.
That shit is embarrassing.
No, it ain't.
To get a promise like it, that is.
It'll let you know you got the snatch back.
I was so aggravated.
Alright. Use the kids table.
Is we putting these tables up too?
All the tables go to
I'm talking about it. Oh, you need that thing, don't you?
What thing?
That tray you told me to clean it, oh, you don't need it for that?
That's the old house that looks in it.
drinking my boyfriend water I put out time. I said, don't be drinking my boyfriend water I put out time.
Drink the fuck out that water. Oh yeah, this table belong down here.
What table?
This one I'm on. This our shirt table. Alright, it's 1 o'clock, bitch. You leaving me?
Yes. Going home.
I know, I'm about to leave too for a second. I'm gonna tell January to the store. I'm gonna grab this shit. Selena will be here by 2. Nobody. I'm breaking this motherfucker.
So who set this up, Gary?
Normally set it up?
No, who set it up yesterday?
Me.
Like that, you know, I couldn't set it up before I left. They were doing yoga.
Yeah, no, I set it up. Still my homie. Homie. Yeah, I ain't said till 7:30. I ended up leaving early.
You said you didn't say something? What time did you say?
Till 5, cause I had to get my package.
Ready to be ready to assess with Gary. Wait, where's Gary? Is he okay?
Yeah, I ain't very happy motherfucker. No.
Girl, she had a little makeup on, the hair curl. Like, let me find out that's a kid.
You know it's for Carrie.
So wait, who's gonna Shepherd's?
I don't know yet. From clergy who's doing what. Can't wait to see what's in about to come in here and say.
Why you say?
Cause she ain't never called up yesterday. She just told Jen that she'll be
Be here
here.
at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
She like, so, John, like, so what's going on? I said, Jen, look, I ain't trying to,
That's what I told her, like, I ain't in that shit. Ain't in it, and I ain't gonna be in it. Don't put me in it. Well, what did she tell you? 10,000 steps. Bam.
You at 10,000 steps?
Yeah, I'm at 10,000 steps. You know, I'm a stepper.
So, Jen, I ain't want to say nothing. I ain't want to be in the middle or nothing.
I just told her what she told me. I said, man, I called her. That's what she said.
Ouch.
That's it, that's all. They took my mic stand?
Your who?
I thought they took my mic stand.
He's going back here.
A second row, pull it back some, pull it back.
I'm about to go to stage time. What? What are you singing? Oh, God. level.
And it ain't trying to come out. Got a lot of chairs in on it. Oh, my stomach got oh, is that little.
Oh, yep, not coming over there.
It's coming. It ain't coming yet.
You need to be so cold and clean. Keep telling you it.
Oh, shit.